So good evening, everyone. This is the Racial Equity and Social Justice Committee of the town of Fairfax meeting on March 4th, 2021. And if I could ask you, Anne, to do a roll call, please.
Yep. Okay, Alexandra.
Here.
Amal. Daria.
Present.
Griselda. Laylee, sorry.
Here.
Liesel.
Here.
Patrice.
I'm here, but I have food poisoning, so I'm kind of in listening mode.
Okay. Serena.
Here.
Sophia.
Here.
Tayu.
Here.
Veronica.
Here.
Bruce.
Here.
And Stephanie.
Hi, I'm here. Oh, am I on mute? Oh, yes.
Nope, we hear you. Okay, thank
All right.
you. Let's see, I need to find the agenda, I guess.
I got it. I can take it from here.
Okay, you can take it from here. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Bruce. Welcome everybody. It's so good to see all your faces. Tonight's a night I especially wish we were in person, but we'll have to channel our good vibes across the screen. So first I want to just review our agenda and have agenda approval. So we will open the meeting with the land acknowledgement. We will have reflection time on our norms and the previous ResJ meeting. We will listen to subcommittee reports, have a budget discussion, an announcement around the renaming of Sir Francis Drake, public comments for items on the agenda and public comment for items not on the agenda, and then we'll close our meeting. Are there any motions to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Anne, can I have a roll call, please?
Yeah, Alexandra.
Yes.
Daria.
Aye.
Griselda.
Yes.
Laylee.
Yes.
Liesel.
Yes.
Patrice. Serena.
Aye.
Sophia.
Yes.
Tayu.
Yes.
Veronica.
Yep.
Bruce.
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
All right. And Serena, do you know we can't see you?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I'm here, I'm listening. I just can't be on camera right now, but I will be able to later.
Okay, no problem. I just want to make sure you knew that. And I know Patrice knows she chose to have her video off. We hope you feel better, Patrice. So I'd like to acknowledge, ResJ acknowledges that we are located on unceded ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok people. Present day, Marin County, we honor with gratitude the land itself and all of its ancestors, past, present, and emerging. So we're going to go ahead and open up. If you'll take us to the PowerPoint, Anne. And feel, yeah, perfect, right on the purpose slide. That's great. And if you'll click play.
At the top there.
It's not, I don't see it.
It's
Got
right
it.
on, it's right
Right.
on there.
Got it.
So I think tonight, this is always important. And I think as we kind of launch into our conversation about norms and a reflection of the last meeting, I think it's really important all nights, but especially tonight, that we hold the purpose of ResJ really close to our hearts, and that we hold the purpose of ResJ together. And that's not just my role, certainly as a facilitator, but that all of you lean into holding this purpose and what it means for each of you individually. Do I have a volunteer to read our purpose? Thank you, Veronica.
The Racial Equity and Social Justice Committee will be advisory to the Town Council of Fairfax, California. The committee will focus on actively dismantling and eradicating systemic and individual racism, bigotry, and discrimination within our town in an effort to create a Fairfax that is explicitly anti-racist, equitable, and inclusive in both word and deed.
Thank you. Do I have somebody to volunteer to be a process observer for tonight? And I can't see everybody's hands when we're screen sharing, so you'll have to give a little shout out. And I'd love if we can have someone who hasn't been a process observer give it a shot.
I don't know what that means, but I can try.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll clue you in. So a reminder that all of us are process observers as well. We're all here to hold the norms of our group together as we do this work. And at any moment, if you feel like we need a gentle, thoughtful reminder of holding the norms, you're all invited to do so. But part of having an equity-centered meeting, and by equity, I don't mean equal, I mean in a social justice, through a social justice lens, is that you co-created the ways that you want to be together in community on the ResJ. And so Sophia, the process observer, has kind of an extra special role that you're going to really be paying attention to our process tonight and whether or not we are holding the norms. And we share the process observation, so you get to really decide how you are personally interpreting the norms based on the conversations that we've held. And if at any time in the meeting you feel like we need a gentle reminder, please raise your hand and let us know that you'd like to remind us of, and then whatever norm. And then at the end of the meeting, I'll invite you to a reflection about how we talked about and engaged with the norms. There's no right or wrong way to do it. The idea is that we have somebody who's offering perspective and some kind of neutral perspective on whether or not we're operating collectively as a team, holding our norms together. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. The way you kind of learn about it is just by doing it. So you can also stop and ask me any questions if you have a question. Thank you. Thanks for being a brave volunteer, your first meeting, and you're already going to process observe. All right. So if you can take us to our norms, and we're going to skip the next slide. And can I, while she's doing that, can I have a timekeeper, please?
I'll be a timekeeper.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. And Anne, can you be our note taker? Loose notes, not minutes.
Yeah, I will try
Okay.
to capture everything. Yeah.
And then I put the norms on the PowerPoint so they'd be easy to read in one place. So you can go back to the PowerPoint, please.
Oh, you want me at the PowerPoint, not the norms?
Yeah, I did it to make it more simple, so you didn't have to switch through a bunch of
Okay.
of
Okay,
different.
so where is that?
So if you'll click play again, please. Okay, and just move it forward. There we go. Hopefully this is easier to navigate for you, Anne, and then for everybody to see our norms in the same place. So tonight is a particularly special night, I feel like, because this is really, to me, a night that is going to make or break your team. And it's going to make or break your work as a Res J, quite honestly. And it's going to make or break your work in relationship to how you do social justice work. And so for everybody on the team to know and the community to know, after the last meeting, there were a lot of feelings. There were a lot of different experiences of the last meeting. And I personally was able to check in with all but 2 people about the last meeting to really better understand what your experience was in the meeting. And one of the questions I asked was, what do we all need to do together to move forward and to be a better, stronger team? And so tonight's conversation, the first part will go from about 40 minutes for our timekeeper there. And we will really be focusing not on so much the past, but taking our learnings from the conflict that we had and moving forward, and everybody leaning into what that means to move forward. In my facilitation, I'm really going to facilitate our norms in a much stronger fashion. And I'm really going to lean heavily on our social justice aspect of the work that we're doing and how our group is holding and not holding power and privilege. I will be very, very transparent to say that I have some concerns that we as a team collectively are perpetuating some of the very things that our purpose is asking us to interrupt in the town of Fairfax. So tonight, I'm going to invite you to check out our norms, and I'd like to invite you to mark 3 of your strengths. When you look at this list of norms, what are 3 norms that are your strength areas? You can mark a little heart, a star, a plus, whatever you want. And as you mark those norms, I'd like you to think about how you're going to use your strengths to support the growth and the development of our team to work towards greater social justice in the town of Fairfax. And if you can give me a thumbs up when you've chosen your norms.
I have a question. Do you want me to time keep now on the 40 minutes?
You can start and we'll do a time check. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. And I'm going to ask now that you choose 3 norms that are your challenge norms. They're norms that when you're triggered, when you have high emotion, maybe when you're angry, frustrated, whatever adverb you want to choose, they're the norms that you are most challenged to keep. Thank you. I saw the thumbs up. And Serena and Patrice, I can't see your thumbs, so if you need me to stop or slow down or just give a shout out. All right.
Guys, I'm really feeling sick, so I'm not planning on saying anything. I'm just listening. So you're not going to see any reactions from me. I'm lying in bed right now.
Okay, thanks for letting us know. Hope you feel better. All right, thumbs up if you're good to go. Okay, I think I see. Veronica, you want 30 more seconds? You got it? All right. Okay. So one comment I want to make about our norms, and this is where I think our work with norms always is challenging. And when we're working on social justice issues, it touches on so many different aspects of our own personal identity, whatever that may be, that it becomes even harder to hold norms. And oftentimes, what is one person's authentic self, and the way that they need to show up authentically and speak their truth can come up against what is somebody else's safety. I'm certainly oversimplifying a very complex issue, but for lack of time, I'll kind of leave it at that simplistic version. And I think that when we're doing social justice work, it happens often, and it is very common that the issues are charged. And so we need to make sure we're striking a balance when we're talking about this work. We're also talking about changing power and privilege in a white supremacist culture. And I use that term, if for those who aren't familiar with the kind of recent notion of what that means, to just talk about the ways that we have white privilege in our society, and where white privilege can come at the forefront of sort of our common norms around culture, and how even when we don't want it to, often that can become the norm that's okay and comfortable and safe. And when we're doing this work collectively and together, whether it's race, sexuality, gender, class, we can't presume to understand each other's experience. And so sometimes those norms can come up against each other. What one person, and you saw that last time in our meeting, what one person needs to speak their authentic truth can come up against what another person needs to feel safe. And to have psychological safety, to feel respected. And in those moments, I really believe that those are the critical moments that make or break teams. Conflict is normal and usual on teams doing difficult work. And so that's why I think the conversation tonight is so critical, and really thinking about what do we all need to move forward. And if someone's speaking their truth, it's also important to know that, norms might be broken, and that isn't okay to go to extreme lengths breaking norms either. So we have to find the balance where people can show up as their authentic selves, and also everyone else can feel respected. And that is not a balance that I'm going to presume to dictate to this team. What I want to do is offer you an opportunity tonight, now that I've heard from everybody, and I chose to say a few words, I know this is a lot of airtime that I'm taking from you, to try to frame our conversation that you all are creating tonight the team that you want to be and that you want to become. And your ability to move through this moment is directly related to the power and the impact that you can have on your own community in Fairfax, that you're asking to do the same work. And we see here just how challenging and difficult that work can be. So as we move through the evening together in dialogue, I call on you to notice when you're challenged, and to take that deep breath, whatever your personal strategy is. But I also encourage you to lean into your strengths. I know all of you to be extraordinary people dedicated to this work, and I want to encourage you to lean on the strengths that all of you have here together tonight. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Anne. And back one. So I'm not going to read these to you. We've been in a lot of meetings now. I'm trying to save some time here. These are operational community agreements, if you'll take a look quickly. And any questions about those?
I'm using my cell phone for the timer, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. That is helpful to know. Appreciate that. All right, if you could go on to the next slide, Anne, please. And the next one. Okay, that text disappeared. So there was an essential question for the team to guide us tonight, and that is, how do we move forward as a stronger, more effective team committed to racial equity and social justice? So if we can kind of hold that question in our hearts tonight, and we'll go to the next slide, Anne. And I wanted to highlight these community agreements, reflecting and listening to all of you and your experiences at the last meeting. These were some that I think are incredibly important. And I did this in partnership with a team member of ours. And so we just take a quick look at those and notice which ones you can lean into and which ones make you lean back. We're gonna do a lot of leaning in tonight. Okay, Anne, if you could go to the next slide. So I'm going to go for our audience to know, ResJ had some homework, which is an agreement that they made to have some homework. And everybody had an opportunity to dig into some resources. We didn't discuss the resources. This is the first time we're here together discussing them. So I'm going to move really quickly. This is not a training, and I've already taken a lot of airtime. I do want to make note of a few frames to consider as we go into our dialogue. So this is from Organizational Management Guru, and I think this really holds for tonight. In great teams, conflict becomes productive. The free flow of conflicting ideas is critical for creative thinking, for discovering new solutions that no one individual could have come to on his own. And I really can't think of any time more important than our social justice work to have discovery of new solutions that you couldn't have come up on your own. So next slide, please. And I'm timing myself, by the way. So don't worry about the fine print. And it looks like some formatting is a little off here with the change in method, but just pay attention to the colors. I just want to highlight where we are. And so any guesses, just a little shout out about where we are in our stages of team development.
Storming. They all
Yeah,
said
so-
simultaneously.
Right. So I feel like we have a lot of consensus around where we are as a team, which is a good thing. I didn't hear anybody saying, adjourning. So that's a great thing. And I highlight this because where we are is normal, and you've heard me say it, and I will continue to say it. We formed, we were super excited, and the lovey-dovey honeymoon phase. And now we got to figure out, who are we as a team? And as you know from being in friendships and relationships, it is tough, difficult work. And then we're going to come to a place where we kind of got it figured out. And it is not a linear process. It's iterative. So we might figure it out a little, and we might we're going to start storming again. I guarantee it. And we're going to figure it out, and it's going to flow in a circular format throughout the time that you're together. And hopefully we do reach the performing stage where you're really taking action, all the things that you've wanted to do, and hitting it out of the ballpark for Fairfax. So just know that you're right where you should be, and we're going to lean into that tonight. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go through the content of the PowerPoint, but I do want to highlight a few frames that we use to think about the work really quickly. And there's more content for anybody who wants to know more about it, but just for the sake of time. The language is helpful just from the standpoint, I know all of you know this, but what I'm trying to do is build common language for our work. And so when we are in difficult, intense, and challenging situations, when we're working with content that is so deeply personal to our heart and our soul and our families and our lives, and frankly, life and death, every day, all day for some of us, these kinds of frames can be helpful to have common language about how to do the work together. And so Othering and Belonging Institute out of Berkeley has incredible, deep, thoughtful resources, some of the best I've seen. They use a concept, bridging or breaking. And so as we move through the evening, I'm going to oversimplify a very deep concept, but we want to think about, are we building bridges to understand each other? Are we building bridges to do racial equity work, or are we breaking relationships and breaking bridges or ties to each other? And the idea is not that we have false harmony. It's not that we sing kumbaya and pretend it's all okay. It's difficult work, but that at any given moment, we're working towards the effort of bridging so that we can really get to the other side. And the other idea is calling in versus calling out in dialogues around racial equity. I want to connect this to one of our norms, which is around risk-taking and safety, and being able to use your authentic voice really at all times. And your specific norm is that you can show bravery and risk-taking, that we have a respectful response to triggers, and that it's okay to make mistakes. And so when we're talking about a time where someone makes a mistake, does not know that they've had a negative impact on another person, we want to try as much as possible. And sometimes it just simply is not possible. And then we have to meet that moment with compassion to call them into the work, to create an opportunity for greater learning, and for them to be able to lean in and understand how they have caused an impact. It might be me at some point. I might cause something on the team. I'm not immune from that either. But the idea is that we're going to bring people into the conversation, and we're not going to cause harm to the extent that we can do that in any given moment. And the other idea is around tone policing. There's a lot of work really been done around that. Again, oversimplifying a complex topic. We all have different styles of communicating. And we also all have different cultures of how we are communicating and how we express ourselves. I mean that figuratively, I mean that quite literally. And sometimes all of our different styles, I'm a person who's very perceived as dramatic and intense. I'm often perceived as angry when I'm not, in real life, not in facilitation life, I hope. And I'm often perceived in ways that don't relate to who I am at all. And I often feel like I cannot be my true self because of certain perceptions people have, and they try to control how I express myself. Where this is a challenge, and I feel like this has really come up on our team, is we have ways of being that are frankly white normative ways of being. And in many of the books you all have read, it's discussed about white dominant culture and white fragility, and how whiteness, even in spaces of diversity, because we are living in a society of oppression, it is the dominant cultural norm at all times. Most times, I don't want to be too extreme there. And if we don't intentionally and purposefully act to interrupt it, then we are participating in oppression. And here where we live, I grew up in Marin County, we place a high value on soft, gentle language, a high value on being nice, a high value on couching the truth. This is my perspective growing up here, couching the truth in this overly nice, neatly tied up in a bow way. And so I want to encourage all of us, when we are, I saw snaps to that, when we are confronted with a communication style that is unlike our own and might raise our hairs, I really want us to lean in a space of openness. And I want us to interrupt and interrogate how oppression is playing out on ResJ. That's not to say people get to do whatever they want and call it culture, but it is absolutely to say that there are some oppressive cultural elements that are playing out on this team. And I think it's really important that we name those. I think it's really important that we address them as a team if you are actually going to move forward and do this work together. So I know that was very long-winded. I took a lot of feedback about what needed to happen tonight and their requests that some of these things were discussed and mentioned. So I just want you to know where this long opening is coming from. So if we could let me see. I think you can take us off the PowerPoint now, Anne, please. And we're not going to start the video, but I'm going to have you cue it up. So this is just a last moment together before we open it up for dialogue. And Stephanie, we're probably at 20 minutes on our clock. Am I right?
One moment, please. So I set it for 35 because I wanted to have a 5-minute buffer, and it's right now, you've got, it's doing a countdown, so I'm trying to do backwards. You've got like just over 17 left.
Okay, so when we're done with this, I'm gonna have you set it for about 25 and we'll do a check-in. We'll do a check-in. All right, I'm gonna hand it over to Tayu, please. And Anne, if you could cue up the video for me, please.
It's ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as soon as I'm done, you'll bring us on to video.
I'm just reading the first paragraph, right?
Yes.
Okay. It is important to understand that this is deep, raw, challenging, personal, heartbreaking, and heart-expanding work. This book will challenge you in ways you have not been challenged before, but we are living in challenging times. There is much work to be done, and it begins with getting honest with yourself, getting educated, becoming more conscious about what is really going on and how you are complicit in it, and getting uncomfortable as you question your core paradigms about race. If you are willing to do that, and if we are all committed to doing the work that is ours to do, we have a chance of creating a world and a way of living that are closer to what we all desire for ourselves and one another.
This work sounds overwhelming, intimidating, and unrewarding. I won't lie to you, it is. You will become overwhelmed when you begin to discover the depths of your internalized white supremacy. You will become intimidated when you realize this work will necessitate seismic change in your life. You will feel unrewarded because there is nobody rushing to thank you for doing this work. But if you are a person who believes in love and justice and integrity and equity for all people, then you will know that this work is non-negotiable. If you are a person who wants to become a good ancestor, then you know that this work is some of the most important work you will be called to do in your lifetime. I'm going to close before we open dialogue with a clip from Layla Saad. This is her response to the end of this quote.
And I love this on so many levels, but particularly the idea of the lack of reward, because I think, and that's a huge part of the book, and I want to get into all of that and white saviorism and white centering. But it's true, like for me, there was sort of this, like, oh, right,
like what's the payoff?
There's no gold star.
Right. And I think, this kind of work is self-reflective work, it's transformation work, and many of us are used to doing personal development, personal growth work, where at the end, there's a feel-good payoff at the end, and you don't necessarily feel that in the same way with this work. The payoff, though, is that you get to live out your values. You get to live where you're treating other people like they are equal to you, and you get to help create a world where people get to be treated the same with their dignity and full humanity. But through the process itself, you're going to feel unrewarded, you're going to feel overwhelmed, you're going to feel intimidated, it's going to be uncomfortable, and that's just the nature of doing this kind of work.
Yeah. One of the other myths, I think it's a myth.
Stop it now. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell. So that is just the nature of doing this work. So I would like to open it up for thoughts from all of you about how we move forward together stronger, working for justice on this team in Fairfax. And I'd like to offer the opportunity for all self-identified people of color to open up the dialogue first. And I'll ask that they step up if they feel so moved, and that other folks who don't identify that way take a step back until everybody's had a chance to speak.
Lisa, what is your question?
How do we move forward as a stronger, more effective team committed to racial equity and social justice?
So I can't answer to how we're going to move forward, because I know we have so much work to do after the last few meetings, and especially the last meeting. But I do want to bring to this group that a few friends that are community members have come to me and talked about the white fragility that is so incredibly apparent while they're watching our meetings. And I feel like there's a burden of the people of color on this committee to hold the norms. And Patrice's letter was 100% on point for me. It resonated with me completely. And so I think that moving forward, there's got to be a lot of self-reflection, and we all have to do it, each of us. But we also have to do it, individually, and we have to do it as a group. And I don't know how we do that as a group yet.
Thank you.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
I had to answer the door while you gave instructions. It's a hospice medication for my mom, so I missed what you were asking. But I think the question is how to move forward. I'm actually feeling optimistic, and those of you who don't know me, optimism's not my strength. But I'm feeling like we who signed up for this, there was no expectation of perfection. There was an expectation to work. And I feel, without knowing everyone, I feel that everyone is really trying. And I don't want to be kumbaya, everything is fine. But for me at this point, if people are trying really hard and are open, then I think that's enough to move forward. And I trust everyone until proven otherwise in this work. And even I went back and watched as much as I could of the last meeting. And I walked away with different perspectives. Like I was like, ooh, ouch, that hurt. Ooh, I can see, I can see more. But I also saw people really struggling to find their way through it. So to me, that's very hopeful and hard. I feel like I don't speak up because I'm shy, but also because I'm worried about making mistakes, and I really want to challenge myself on that. one more thing. Am I going on for too long? Okay.
Not at all. I'm not timing any of this.
To expect that there will be no white fragility at all, I think would be it wouldn't be like I wouldn't expect there to not be anything because it comes along with racism. And it's there and it's going to happen and we're going to learn or we're not. And if it's ongoing and we're not learning, then that's a different conversation we need to have. But for now, I trust that everyone is working and trying. And so that fragility doesn't scare me very much right now for me.
Thank you.
I guess I could go. Sorry, I don't know why my camera looks all oily, but I think I really would like to know where everyone is at. And like, I mean, I know where I'm at, but I would like to know like what everyone else is feeling and if it's like the same as me. I definitely agree with Tayu and Griselda. And I think like white fragility is like a really hard topic just because it's the norm and it's something that we don't even think about. It's just kind of second nature to probably every single one of us, really. And it's so much deeper than what kind of meets the eye. And like Griselda said, I don't think it's necessarily something that we'd be able to fully move past. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to. And yeah, I think maybe like, I like the idea of like taking a good look at our norms and maybe even possibly like trying to get something in there about that.
Thank you. And there's a couple of people who haven't spoken, so I am just going to hold quiet until they feel so moved to speak. And if you'd like to pass, you can just let me also know that you're going to pass.
I wasn't at the past meeting, obviously, so I think I'm gonna pass.
Okay, you're more than welcome to comment on any of the content if you feel so moved. I did see you have a reaction, so you don't have to have been at the last meeting to comment on any part of it that you'd like to. So I'd invite you to do that if you feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree completely that there's this very like Eurocentric expectation of etiquette and what's proper speech, what's a proper way to talk with someone. And I completely related to when you said that sometimes people think I'm angry or that I'm mad. And I feel like over time I've almost been like conditioned that now I have a lot more of like a pacifist voice of it. But I do think it's important that especially the people of color, again, I'm not completely filled in on the situation, but I feel like it is important for people of color to feel like they don't have to censor themselves or adhere to any white norms to be on the council, because then that feels a little counterproductive.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Alex. Is that a hand? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm I'm not really sure what I want to say because I think there's a lot here. I think what's been frustrating me is when there is conflict, it feels like to me there's calling out or name calling, and it gets to where it affects all of us, no matter how we identify. And I think I personally haven't felt or picked up on really any white fragility on the Res J. Looking back, I can see the instances that people might be referring to. But I think it's important to remember that sometimes, like, depending on who says it, it can be taken a certain way. So I might be feeling the same way as a white person, and they might have just said it before me, but then it could be taken as white fragility versus if I had said it, that I was offended by it, it would be taken differently. So I guess that's just something I've been thinking about. And the other thing is, when we do express the breaking of norms, I think it's also important not to break norms in that process, because I feel like that's what's been happening. And I really want to be respectful of everyone's emotions and triggers and the way they feel. And I think it's valid. But when we're calling out each other, it doesn't seem productive. And when we throw out our norms to call attention to the breaking of a norm, it doesn't seem productive. And so I guess moving forward, I would hope that even when we're feeling a lot of emotions and emotions are running high, that we can continue to remember why we're here, which is one of the norms. So yeah, I that wasn't very articulate, but I'm feeling a lot of things. So I'm also just curious to hear how everyone else is feeling.
Thank you.
Just under a minute, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Let's, I'm gonna just make the call to add some time there. Let's go for 10 minutes and see where we are.
Okay.
Just because there's such uncomfortable silence right now, I just want to tell you guys where I'm at. I'm feeling like my voice doesn't matter. Call it white fragility, call it whatever you want, but I call it systemic racism, and I'm not enjoying being on this committee.
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you for speaking your truth.
I just want to acknowledge what Patrice just said. It's very hard to hear. I struggle with the fact that, you know, the conversations around what happened last week have happened outside of this group, that there is, you know, that we continue to sort of, I think, be hamstrung a little bit by the fact that we meet over Zoom, that so much of what could be handled interpersonally isn't handled that way. And and like right now we're all sitting here, but we're not really kind of in possession of each other's thoughts and feelings about last week's events. I'm sorry, last month, the last meeting. That's kind of where I am right now.
Thank you. I think that's what I would encourage you all to lean into. You definitely can talk to individuals, but this is the work, and it is public work, and it's difficult to do alone. It's difficult to do without an audience, and certainly it becomes more challenging when we're raw and vulnerable in public. I think that all of the comments were significant, but to hear from a community member that they feel like their voice doesn't matter, and that there is systemic racism happening, and to have silence fall is definitely challenging. And I think that part of the work of ResJ, if you're asking the community of Fairfax to be anti-racist, is that all of you have to lean into the work. And I am choosing not to have a lot of commentary right now as you do that, because I want to open the space for you to lean in and say the difficult things that you need to say and learn what each other is feeling in this moment. That's your work as a team.
Well, I'm feeling like I'm between a rock and a hard place, and I'm afraid to say anything. I'm usually the person in the room who has one of the loudest voices and speaks up most frequently and most loudly. And I too am often misinterpreted as being angry when I'm not, or that sort of thing. And I'm really afraid to say anything because I don't want to be misinterpreted, or I don't want to be misinterpreted. And I know I'm not confident that questions would be asked according to the norms. And I guess that's what's hard for me. The norms mean a lot to me. And, you know, I'm not gonna let it stop me. I feel committed to this. And I think to take risks in a group like this, it's important that everyone is committed and willing to do the hard work.
I know we're not raising our hands tonight, but if we're all committed to doing the hard work, there should be a lot of questions being asked right now. We have a norm that says ask questions, don't assume. I feel like everyone on this committee is assuming. I mean, look at the deafening silence. This is ridiculous in my opinion. And I'm sorry, I know that I'm coming across as the angry Black woman, but you know what, guys? That's how I'm feeling. I'm feeling like it doesn't matter what I say. If you feel discomfort, you feel discomfort, and I'm wrong. And that is so not racial equity or social justice. I mean, if we're going to ask each other questions, let's ask each other questions. But instead, we're getting recommendations about bringing in people of color to tell us what it's like being a person of color. We live in Fairfax. We're people of color here. Make us feel like we matter.
I don't know who made that recommendation, and that's come up. And I don't know anything about that recommendation. And, you know, if I had an opportunity to vote on it, I would vote no for those very reasons. So I'm really confused about that.
So am I.
I am too.
I also think maybe some of the deafening silence right now is that we're trying to give each other space to speak. So I think I just want to acknowledge that maybe some of us are trying to step back a little bit because we talk a lot, like me, and just let other people speak.
And oh, Griselda, go ahead.
Do you want to speak, Bruce?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, similar to what Lisa was saying, from my point of view, I heard Lisa say, and I totally appreciate it, that people who identified as people of color should speak first. And I have been, and in general, I tend to, for my own personal unique situation or semi-unique situation on this committee, I feel like I'm in kind of an odd position as being the mayor. That's actually been mentioned, being on the council. Oddly enough, I'm the only male on this committee. That's not by design, but it's just something that I happen to observe. Not that this is the first time I've been in that situation, but it's actually quite common. But it's an odd situation for me that leads me to feel like I need to really step back, and I do that a lot. I try to not speak too much, and I feel a little self-constrained by that. So I just want to acknowledge, as Liesl said, that the deafening silence is maybe in part because some of us, for various reasons, are stepping back. There's a lot of thoughts here, but I'm going to shut up.
Could I say something?
Stephanie? See, Serena, just a second. I think Griselda, you're
Sure.
going to say something, Stephanie, and then Serena.
Sorry, I didn't see the system to.
No problem. We were a little looser tonight. So Griselda, Stephanie, and then Serena.
So, Patrice, I would like to ask you, what questions should we be asking of you? Because that would help me understand, and it would educate me.
I guess that's my core frustration. These questions shouldn't be for me. These should be for everyone on the team. We're supposed to be moving forward as a team. This is not Patrice's team. I've played on teams since I was 6 years old. I was an NCAA athlete. Like, if I can do teams, it's a strength. And this just doesn't feel like a team. Like, why am I different? Because of my skin color?
No, Patrice, I asked you because you said that we were not asking you questions. So,
I guess you misheard me. I didn't say you weren't asking me questions. I said you guys weren't asking any. It's like, there's hard work to do. Some of it happens in this meeting. A lot of it needs to happen outside this meeting. Ask questions of others. Bring back information that we can all use, but don't lean on me for this, because I'm just gonna be frank. I am not here to teach white people. And if that's what you guys are looking to me for, then I would rather resign.
So I guess I'll ask a question in general, which is, how can we make people feel that they're heard and that their voices are all valuable in this process, and that no one's voice is privileged above others?
I guess the first thing is calling on someone when they raise their hand. I know that you guys were shocked that I said that, but it has literally become a running joke between myself and my friends. I post these meetings to Facebook. People time it. I just put my hand up and see if anyone will call on me, and you don't. And no one even points out the fact that my hand is up. I mean, so that's where it starts. I think it ends at checking your privilege at the door. Like, I am African American, but I also went to one of the most prestigious universities in this country. I have privilege as well, but no one sees that. No one asks about that. No one talks about that. I don't want to give you guys questions. I want this to be organic, like it's been when I've worked at, huge companies in corporate America or gone to schools like Amherst College. Like, people have questions because they have questions. And Liesl, I completely am indebted to you for the last meeting and going through your data-centric mind and explaining to everyone that I'm actually not the one taking up the time here. So the fact that there are people on this committee who just go right to the fact that I'm taking up space, I'm taking up time, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, like, that's not right. And Lisa, perhaps you have a term to call it. I call it bullshit.
Is it my turn or?
Stephanie was going to go, and then Serena.
I've sort of lost. It's not funny. I'm just like, so much I want to say, and I want to thank you, Patrice, for expressing all this. And at some point, I want to have a one-on-one with you. In some ways, I was really dreading coming tonight, but it actually feels really good to be here, and I think it's really healthy that we're talking about this. And how do I want to begin? I want to share. I'm making some connections real time right now, so it might be a little bit hard for me to articulate, but I have spent a lot of time digging deep in the last few weeks. And as I shared in the meeting last time, I'm so deeply sorry for the mistake I made and the triggering and the pain that I caused, Patrice. I'm very, very sorry. And I'm sorry for the centering that I did on myself and the emotional reaction. And if that's white fragility, I own that. And I'm happy that if I can be an example for the community of what that looks like, that's not an easy thing to do. And tell you, I just want to share with you the way that you shared that back with me was a little bit hard to hear. And if you could think about that in the future, because it's not easy to be, number one, a council member in this role, but also publicly, going through this, right? And so to hear that you're like talking about this and gossip, it feels like you're gossiping about my white fragility moment, whereas the way others, shared back how this might have been a white fragility moment was a little bit more delicate and supportive. So I just want to give you that feedback. The tone policing is a completely new concept to me, and I feel like I have work to do with regard to that. And I can, or as Lisa would say, lean into that. I'm seeing that, Patrice's style, maybe, I don't know what the right word is, but sometimes if she's disruptive or, like sometimes she's just been interjecting right now, or, it's not like if it's breaking our norms, or if it's not what I'm used to or somebody else is used to, maybe we're not reacting or responding in the right way, or we're responding from a perspective of operating in this, white supremacist way. So I am like connecting with that, and it's kind of like an aha moment, and I want to share that with you. Also, I recognize that, last month that I was, asking for external validation of what I know to be true, which is I'm so deeply committed to this work, and I should have never done that, particularly to someone who was very triggered in the moment. And that also, triggered an emotional reaction because this work is very emotional. And so, I don't really apologize for that. I'm a very passionate person. And for those of you who've known me for a while, I'm committed to this. And so it was triggering, and, it is what it is. I think these types of experience will get us closer, and we'll be stronger as a team for it. I hear you, Daria, that we need to be comfortable making mistakes. Like we need to be comfortable saying, oh shoot, I shouldn't have said that. And it's hard because we're on a public Zoom and we don't really want the community to be gossiping about us. And we need to feel comfortable that, we're going to be forgiven, and that there's trust, and we're a team, and we're all in it for, the same reasons. And so I feel you on that 100%. And just back to Patrice, it was like a gut punch to hear that, you don't feel heard, and, you might leave. And I do value your input, and I hope we can get beyond this. And I feel like I've taken up too much time. So that's where I am right now. And thank you all who have reached out to me. And
So I'm gonna, I hope we can just stay on this till we feel like there's closure. And actually, I don't mean closure, until we can have it rest for tonight. So I'm gonna ask, generally I leave the timing decisions to you as a team, but I am gonna ask that we continue a bit longer to process this. I'm gonna ask we just take a deep breath right now, or close your eyes, whatever will just center you. And I just want to offer us a quiet moment to kind of process everything up until this point. And Serena, I know you're next. So just touch base with yourself. If you can take a minute and check out the norms, touch base with the norms. And I want to say thank you for so deeply leaning in right now. Serena.
Yeah, I think Stephanie covered a bit of what I was gonna say, but so I won't go into detail, but I'm not trying to like call people out here, but I think, I don't think this is the time to be scared of saying the wrong thing. And I personally won't hold what anyone says against them. But if we're all not gonna like tell our truths here and how we're feeling, then how are we gonna know what to do in the future as a committee, and how are we going to get past this? It doesn't seem like that's going to happen if not everyone is able to express how they're feeling in the moment, no matter if it's wrong or right. I think we all just have to say.
So I'm going to interject something here because I want to pose a question to everybody. So I think the community, certainly we know that there is gossip in the community, but I think there's a big difference between gossip and people kind of witnessing this process and having really, really strong feelings about the way that white culture is dominant. And that's not about any one person. I live in it. We are all racist, and we are all undoing, and sexist and classist, and right. And we are all in the process of undoing that. So what I want to name right now, and I want to look to all of you to resolve this. I could give you a million answers of what I've seen work, but those answers are not your team. So the solution rests within all of you. And I have 100% confidence that you will work it out. You are doing it right now. You are leaning in and doing this work. What I'd like you to perhaps consider and talk about is how you do that work. Because when people are unlearning racism, it is painful. It's painful for people unlearning. I've had my own moments of, oh my God, what? I did what? It is unavoidable. We swim in the water of racism no matter where we live and who we are. So if that helps to just know we all are racist, classist, sexist in some form or fashion. And so when we undo that, it is painful. It is painful to ourselves to have these ahas and this like horror of like, oh my God, I did what? It's painful, as the quote so eloquently said, to understand that she said seismic nature of undoing oppression and privilege within ourselves, like our cell, our soul, our mind, our spirit, our being. So here's the challenge, is that when people are doing that work, I heard some things I want to highlight about the burden on people of color, about definitely feeling that all voices don't matter. And I've heard that from more people than Patrice. So I really want to highlight, I heard from all of you. I spent hours on the phone with this team, and I want to highlight that those are issues on the team. They are not unique to Patrice. The concerns about racism on the team, the concerns about oppression playing out on the team, it is just the nature of this work. So here's kind of where I'd like to see what your solutions are, is that while people are speaking their truth and taking risks, you are going to make more mistakes. Lord, I might even make a mistake, right? And then we're really going to have to wrestle with that. You're going to make mistakes. And so I want you guys to answer the question, how do you create a safe space for people who are not white on this team to feel safe, to feel heard, to feel like they do not have to give up their identity to be part of this team, to feel like they get to speak their truth, which on this team is actually the primary notion of what we're doing. And that while we unlearn all of these things as a team with the goal, with the purpose that you all have to make Fairfax more equitable and just, it is a dance of how do you unlearn that in a way that is authentic and not harmful, while we can lift up this space for all folks to feel included. And I could give you a million thoughts about that, but it's your work to figure out how you dance with that tension. Because both conflict, the needs conflict. And I also know that there are folks who can help with that, where people have said, I don't want to have to teach people. I don't want the burden to be on me, and it shouldn't be. And so in this work, there is a very big societal conversation right now about how people who are not white lean into doing more learning. And it's a dance with, how do I ask the person who I need to know the information from, right? And I just want to name this because this is just germane to the work. How do I ask that's who I need to know from, but being respectful that this is an experience like day in and day out, what is happening. It is not like other pain. And I don't want to speak for anybody, but I do, I want to lift up the notion that this is inescapable from the minute people wake up to the minute they go to bed, and every second in between, in every space. There are no safe spaces. And if they are, they're very limited. And so that pain, and please, you may check me if I'm trying to notice a theme, and I'm really not trying to speak for anybody. So check me if I'm not noticing a theme properly. But we need to be able to do both. We need to learn about each other and be in relationship and community. And then we need to share the burden of how we learn together in a way that isn't going to cause further harm whenever possible. So I want to pose that challenge to you in our last few minutes of what do you need? Like, what do you need to do this work and continue on in this way? Veronica.
I want to start by saying thank you for that homework, Lisa, and for the way that you continue to facilitate us. Feel really grateful for you. And thank you for the suggestion of having folks who identify as a person of color to start us off. And I feel like that's a fantastic, I would be down to co-sign for that norm. That always, that is the space. I think I perhaps resonate, Daria, with you, that I tend to feel excited to move through an agenda, or I have that white supremacist behavior where I want to, as you may have all picked up on, the tendency to want to move into action or keep us going through. And I recognize that that is not always beneficial, often not beneficial, and especially with this work, I'm figuring out more and more, might need to really get checked more. And so I would love that idea. If every time there was an opportunity to comment, the default was that white folks wait until every person of color has had the opportunity to speak. And if they don't want to speak, they can name that. That would make me feel comfortable that I'm not being quiet because I'm not wanting to be involved, because that's often what goes within my mind is, oh, people, yeah. So that would be something I'm down with moving forward with, and allowing that to make space.
Thank you. I saw lots of thumbs up to that. Alexandra.
So I have kind of a couple things to say that I've noticed throughout this conversation. I think something that I feel like I keep noticing is these assumptions being made. And I think that's what makes it hard for us to not necessarily, I don't want to say move on, but progress in the work. And it goes both ways. So we don't want to assume anything that anybody is feeling. But, to make the assumption that the silence was because people weren't participating or they didn't have questions, I think can sometimes be more harmful than to, give people the benefit of the doubt. I know a lot of stuff is going through my mind right now, and I am a person of color. So there's a lot going on. Also taking things for what they are, in both the person who's expressing trauma, but also the person who's accepting accountability. I think that accountability was absolutely taken, and we have to respect that. And unfortunately, the situation happened. We can't go back. But when accountability is taken and recognized and owned, then it has value. And then I also think that sometimes we don't always have to respond to everything, because I've noticed a back and forth that kind of pattern has been happening, where if someone speaks their truth, we can take it and accept it. And we don't have to defend ourselves. We don't have to counter or say, well, actually, this is what I meant. And just take it because what you said resonated with someone in a specific way. And sometimes always that's valid. And then we avoid this back and forth. And I hope that would be able to help us to acknowledge each other and let each other feel heard and feel safe to express our truth. And then I also wanted to express some of my truth, in that I agree that I'm not here to educate people or share my trauma for white gaze. You know, I feel like it's very unlikely that I will share any of my trauma in a public Zoom. Not that I don't trust you all individually, but this is a public Zoom. And yeah, so that's very difficult. And I also have struggled with like feeling like the younger person. I know there's a couple of us on here that are younger, and it took me a while and still is, I'm still trying to figure things out of like feeling like I'm allowed to speak, because like I just got out of school, and when you're in school you get told when to speak, and that's a process I'd like to break. So yeah, I don't think I really answered Lisa's question, but that's kind of what's on my mind at the moment.
I'm going to take a pause after that as well. We can just take a moment and hear what she just said. And then I'll call in the next person. Thank you, Alex. Alexandra. Bruce.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. The thing I wanted to just ask, and I can't promise what could be done about it, but I can ask on the council level about this, is, and I guess I'll step back and say that one of the feelings that I've been having is that I would love to just get to know every one of you individually, but there's all these obstacles. There's the Brown Act, there's time, there's, anyway, it seems like it's come up before, and I heard this from what Alexandra just said, that the trusting each other is one thing, but then being in a public Zoom is another thing. And that was a council decision. And as we all know, we've got this balance that we all do. We struggle with it on the council and on the planning commission and on every committee I've been in. There's this balance between transparency with the public so that people in Fairfax who are not on this committee, maybe even wanted to be on this committee but didn't get chosen and are interested in this committee or whatever it is, can see what we're doing. But then on the other side, being a public committee while we're working on this very difficult work, and we need to develop trust. And yet we're on TV, and we're not on TV at the moment, but I'll tell you, on a council meeting, we're on live TV. And we don't know what we're going to say. We go in there, we're trying to figure it out on the fly. We fumble and stumble, and at the end, every single night, I process it and think, boy, I sure didn't get those words out straight. It's horrible. I wonder, just a question for the committee, if we were to be able to have some process where sometime maybe we could meet without it being a public meeting, without it being recorded, but not have any action items, just to discuss and get to know each other. I don't know exactly how that could work. And Lisa, you might want to just think about this and turn it over in your mind, but other committee members, I'm just throwing out an idea, and believe me, I have no idea where it could go, but not not all of our committees in town, in fact, none of our committees in town, other than the council and the planning commission, are recorded and on TV when they do things. We don't all do that. This committee seems to be special in that regard. And I just want to say that's because we're a really important committee. So, hey, let your chest puff out for a moment and take that as a compliment. We're doing really important work, and that's one of the reasons why this is so public. But it also can be very difficult given the nature of the work that we have to do. And I'm just feeling this desire among all of us to get to know each other more. I certainly have that desire. I wish we weren't on Zoom. I wish we weren't on TV. I wish we weren't constrained to 2 minutes per person. I wish all these things, and I feel like things could be different if they weren't. Maybe they would go crazy if they weren't, but I feel like with Lisa's facilitation, I think we would do okay. But if we were all in a room together and able to really have that, all the communication that goes across when we're physically together and when we can just mingle, I think that would maybe help us. It would be different anyway. And I'm just throwing out the idea that maybe we can discuss some way to give us some space like that, interspersed with spaces like this. Just throwing that out. And I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just throwing it out.
So one of my jobs was to follow up with Garrett about that, because I've heard that feedback from everybody and trying to figure out creative solutions while maintaining a commitment to inform the public. And so a couple of things we are going to do is we're going to open the Zoom room early. I just need to confirm with Anne when that is. So a lot of times before a meeting, you go in and you hang out like, hey, how are you doing? And you really learn a lot about people, right? So we're going to open the Zoom room early, and Anne and I'll let you know what time that is. I will come as early as I need to, but I don't want to put her on the spot to tell me right now when she can get there to open it for us. And also I talked to Garrett about how to do some dyad shares. One way to build team is to have some constructivist listening opportunities to hear and learn from each other. And so we did not do it today because we're gonna have so much time for conversation. We're gonna start in an opening with a very short dyad. You'll have a question prompt. I take it from everything you guys are sharing and telling me, so it's relevant. And you'll just have 2 minutes to talk and listen to each other, and then we'll come back together. And he said that was fine for Brown Act. And then the third idea, and I don't want to talk about it tonight because we're going to be really short on time, is opening the pavilion. And he said that we could have a training in the pavilion, and that the Fairfax staff would be able to help us keep it, sanitize it, keep it COVID safe. And we could measure out social distance for chairs and benches and all sorts of things. So if that feels good to people, then we'll just need to set a date. We're already running through March very quickly, maybe beginning of April. So we'll for sure do the dyad. We'll for sure open the Zoom room early, and then we can check in about the pavilion. So just know that I have heard you, and I've been working with our chairs and Bruce and Garrett to make sure that that can happen for everybody. Where's everyone at? Are we ready there more dialogue, dig in a little further, or have some closure and temporary closure? I don't think it ever ends. And move on to the next item. I need a little feedback because I can't read the body language. I'm not sure what the thumbs up is for. Because there were two options. Okay, Veronica.
I want to say thank you to everybody who shared authentically and vulnerably, and I'm really grateful for you and for this opportunity. So thank you for that. And at this moment,
for what it is worth on my end, I feel ready, but I'm aware it's not so much up to me as it is to folks who have felt harmed and heard and not heard. So I'd love to hear from them that it's okay to move forward.
Alexandra.
Yeah, my thumb was that I, on a personal level, am feeling ready to move on. But I also want to acknowledge that it's okay to vote no on that if that's how someone's feeling.
I encourage you, if you want more time, to not hold back, because this is definitely an important moment to take that time. Daria.
So I want to say as a final comment, or my final comment, I think that Patrice, I value your presence on this committee greatly. And I think it would be a real shame if you were to leave at this point. We have a lot to learn from each other, and you're an essential part of that. And I know you've thought about leaving before, and you know, I hope that you can find good reasons to stay.
I do too, but just being truthful, speaking myself, I don't feel like I'm getting a lot out of this. And there are many things that I like to do and need to do. So I accept everyone's apology. I appreciate the support, but now I've got some thinking to do to decide what I'm going to do next.
Thank you for that, Patrice. Other thoughts?
I have a thought. Am I okay to go? I don't know the.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't see your hand. Sorry, I was looking at a different side of the screen. Yes. Please.
Okay. Yeah, I think not to say like that Patrice should or shouldn't do something, but I think it'd be a real shame for the whole committee and not. How do I clarify that I don't think it's Patrice's fault? I think it'd be a shame if the committee wasn't able to keep people of color in it. If it was something that drove people of color out. You just muted yourself.
I'd like to pause on that for a minute, and I'd like you all to think about that. What it means to create a team where people of color want to be part of it, feel like it is worth their time, like they have a place and a space of belonging, and where they don't feel like the burden of doing anti-racist work is on them. So if we can just take a little bit of time right now to think about that question, please. Any other last thoughts? I feel like there's a couple people who have some last thoughts and are questioning whether they say them right now. That's my read of a Zoom room. I encourage you to speak up if your heart is heavy. Or light, but I sense some unspoken things right now.
It, I guess I would like to acknowledge that it does feel, and I've been in an organization, actually an organization I spent 3 decades of my life supporting, and that kind of melted down, and I don't want to see that happen here. And I feel like we're dancing on the edge of that fire, but at the same time, dancing on the edge of that fire is exactly what our mission says we should be doing and why we're here. So I just want to acknowledge both sides of that coin. That's how I'm feeling right now. The sense of excitement that we are getting into it. This isn't getting into it in terms of writing a policy statement, but this is getting into it in the sense that we need to before we can come anywhere near writing any kind of a recommendation. And that getting into it is difficult. And I appreciate that. And I thank you all for the discussion that we're having and the vulnerability and the difficulty of it. And I apologize for my silence sometimes. I hope you heard when I was saying that I find myself in a very weird position. I find myself feeling like my presence, my gender, my hair, everything about me probably triggers somebody on this committee. And so I try to stay out of the way and not trigger people, but it's not because I don't appreciate what we're doing here. So thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to keep them brief. But I am going to ask that after I go, somebody, a person who does not identify as white, close with the last word. I don't want that to be me. So we talk about something called humble inquiry, and I think it applies here. We didn't answer the question I posed. I want to make note of that. There were some really good ideas and thoughts, but I believe that was the beginning of answering that question. And so one is to just make sure you're speaking from your own experience, that you really stay focused on your experience, naming yourself and not others, to inquire. Take a stance of humility that you can never presume to know the life or the experience of anyone, period, and most especially people who are not of your race, class, or gender, ever, ever. Even if we've held pain, it is literally impossible for me to ever understand what it is like to be a Black woman. No amount of pain I have ever been through compares. And so because we honor the pain of others does not mean we diminish our own pain. It means it's different. And if we're to do this work, we must recognize that this work is lifting up that very difference. And it is stepping back from a place of our privilege. To inquire with each other, to say, tell me more about that. One of the most powerful questions that I ever can ask as a coach, tell me more, and what do you need? What do you need? I think you made it through the fire. I think you took a baby step to the other side. And I think you all are at a critical moment, whether you're going to continue the work and keep taking steps towards greater justice, or as Bruce said, it will fall apart. So I'll stop there with my many thoughts. And I would like to just have one person who is not white share their last thoughts, the last word, and then we'll move on to the next item. Alexandra.
Yeah, I just want to say that while, like, of course, experiencing racism and being a person of color in a white society is extremely hard and causes a lot of hurt, there are so many great things about being a person of color. And I just want to recognize that. I know that we're trying to challenge ideas and do great things, but I also want to acknowledge that there's so many great things about cultures and being a person of color that I feel like sometimes we focus on the negative, and I would honestly love to feel celebrated and feel that and acknowledge that on the Res J.
I'd like to say something. I think I was not very articulate or clear when I asked Patrice what questions we should be asking. And I in no way meant to put you on the spot, but I am interested, and I hope to find a way to hear, because I do think that you are, Patrice, the person who has felt more harmed. And I am very, very interested in understanding how to keep you, basically. Because your perspective is very important and valued, and so it's not. I am asking the questions from a very deep place of humility, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Okay, are we okay to move on? If you could just give me a thumbs up if you're okay. I just want some consensus here where everybody's at. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being vulnerable and taking risks and speaking your truth. I feel humbled to be of service to the process. So thank you so much. And thank you, really special thanks to everybody who talked to me to navigate this moment. So we are going to move into subcommittee reports. And we have policing, the ad hoc mission and vision, community education, and the policy subcommittee. So if you don't have a report, that's okay. You can just say that you don't have a report. And if you do, we're only going to take 5 minutes for the report or less. So timekeeper, if you could take care of the 5 minutes. And policing subcommittee, do you have a report to share?
Yes.
All right.
So I'm just kind of going to read what I wrote for the sake of time. So the PPPSA, also just to not use abbreviations, the Police Practices and Public Safety Alternatives Committee has met 4 times since its formation. Throughout those meetings, we've been working on creating and building a relationship with Interim Chief Tabaranza. We felt it was important to begin to build trust with the police in order to create a safe space for transparent and productive conversations. We created a list of questions to present to the chief, which ultimately was broken down into sections. About 3 weeks ago, we presented the chief with our first round of questions so he may prepare for our listening session, which happened on February 25th. At that listening session, he shared personal background information and information about the Fairfax Police Department. He mentioned that the Fairfax Police Department's mission is to build lasting relationships with the community. They have a minimal staff of 10 full-time officers. Chief Tabaranza added that they are a, quote, very lean department. He also talked about how the department has felt outcast and unwelcome by the community in recent months. He mentioned 70% of the officers are people of color and 75% of non-sworn-in officers are people of color. And that implicit bias training is required by the department. Chief Tabaranza briefly spoke on how working with us will provide clarity and answers. We can work together to understand each other's purposes. In our next meeting, we will be discussing and responding to what we heard from the interim chief. We felt that it was best to listen to what he had to say and provide him with a safe space to speak from his perspective. We also plan to create an action plan on moving forward, which includes reviewing our second round of questions for the interim chief.
Thank you. I feel like that was perfectly timed. Okay, I see some hands up for questions. Stephanie and then Veronica.
So, yeah, just the questions that you asked the interim chief Tabaranza, were they just overview related, or have you started to roll up your sleeves on the data related to, you know, police performance and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we broke the questions into sections. So we did discuss asking questions about like statistics and things like that, but we did use that first meeting to ask baseline questions about the Fairfax PD. So the hope is that in the second round of questions, we will get more specific and ask those types of questions.
So you haven't developed that questionnaire yet for him related to the police statistics?
I don't know.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we segmented the list of questions into two. Chief Tabaranza is currently reviewing the second group of questions because they are primarily data driven.
Thank you, Patrice. So one of the reasons why I'm asking is that I just want to make sure, and I've raised this publicly, so it's no surprise, but I just want to make sure that when, you know, they, whoever is comparing Fairfax Police Department performance against national data, other towns, whatever it is, it's very apples to apples. And I've spoken to people who represent certain organizations that post data, and there's nuances, right? With the police department's software system hasn't been upgraded yet. I've talked about this, and I have issues with using other people's data and massaging it and publishing it for public consumption, and it's not the data that the police themselves are putting on their website that constitutes an integrity issue for me. And so I really want to make sure that, you know, you're being fully transparent, and Rico has an opportunity to really explain that to you. And I've shared this with as many people as possible, so I'm sharing it with the public again. And I just really hope that you dig into it. Thank you.
Okay, Veronica.
Just wanted to add, I don't think you mentioned it, Alexandra, but I wanted to make sure to add that Alexandra was chosen as our chair for the subcommittee.
Fantastic.
That she gave the report, and so I just wanted to honor you in that. And to ask, knowing that we have Sophia with us now, Maybe now is not the right time, but just out of curiosity, if Sophia were to be interested in joining any subcommittees, curious about how to make sure she can know that she's invited or what that could look like.
The 5 minutes is up, just so you know.
Okay,
But I think that's a great idea.
Yes, she is welcome to join, and we could talk about that and reach out to you, Sophia. You can listen tonight. Maybe that'll perk your that'll perk your interest.
You have, just because we can't reach a quorum, but you have 5 people right now. Is that right? Okay.
4.
You have 4. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
My comment was just, I wanted to make sure that your questions, Stephanie, about the data and related stuff were, that we're aware of those on the subcommittee. Do we have her questions?
It's around calls initiated in particular.
Yeah.
And there's another item. I have to go back to my email, but Rico is well aware.
Well, I just want to make sure that we address them.
Can you just send an email?
Yeah.
Okay. So ad hoc mission and vision subcommittee. Do you have a report?
We developed our draft mission and vision in December, and we've sent it out December, January, and February. So there's no update beyond that. That's
so
the update.
The next step for that was that there's going to be a special meeting. You guys all agreed on that to just finalize it, because it was going to take some time and it was difficult to fit into a ResJ meeting.
That wasn't my recollection, but I know that was yours. So could we just quickly round robin on that? Did we all agree that we wanted a special meeting on mission and vision? Is that right?
I proposed it and we all voted on it.
Oh, okay. All right, then I'll work with Ann on setting that up. How much time do we think we need?
An hour?
For the ad hoc subcommittee? Or for all of us?
Meeting of
like
the
to
whole committee
finalize
to
the-
discuss that draft, right?
Sorry?
A meeting of the full ResJ committee, or as many of us that can attend, to discuss the draft that the ad hoc committee has
Yes.
provided us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd say we need 2 hours.
Okay, so 2 hours. Can somebody, you show me on your hands just an hour, 2, 3? If everybody could just give me their input. I got a half. I like the creative. Weasel has this is a half. I didn't know a thumb was a half.
I will vote for an hour and a half if everyone commits to reading them beforehand and truly spending time beforehand. Otherwise, it needs to be 2, I would think.
Okay. And on that, I'll say that later. Okay, so community education subcommittee.
We haven't met yet.
Yes, we have.
Wait, community.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of something else. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, we met this past Sunday, and we talked about a couple things. We wanted to ask the ResJ, so maybe this is an agenda item for next month, but about a process for acknowledging emails in some way. Because I know we want to keep public comment time fair, but we also want to acknowledge the people who are contacting us. And then also public comment discussion time, offering at least a brief pause, so that if someone would like, they may comment on public comment. And then we came up with some actionable ideas, which I'm sure we will be narrowing down in the next meeting. But some of our ideas include creating a document or handbook to provide resources that can be posted on the town's website. Town signs similar to the new COVID signs surrounding Heritage Months, Black History Month, Latinx Hispanic Heritage Month, Asian Pacific Islander Month, things like that. Poster campaigns, so signs, posting signs in the intersection near the gas station and the theater, posters in storefronts, and then movie nights. So doesn't necessarily have to be documentaries, but at least something surrounding culture or education on racism and inclusion and diversity. And then supporting marginalized groups so that we can understand what they need. So an example we came up with was Latinx Parents Group. And then also getting translators for our monthly ResJ meetings, and potentially the PPPSA, since that also is a public meeting.
So there is a way, we did a lot of work on this in another meeting that I attend, to have translation on Zoom. So I know a lot of you actually already know this, but on Zoom, you can have a translation button and it works pretty effortlessly once you get the hang of it. So just in terms of the technological aspect, that's easy to do. So I didn't see the order of hands. I know there were some comments.
Serena had her hand up first, I think.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, we also, I feel like it's important to mention, we also talked about to kind of lead up into our conversation about like cultural celebrations. We also talked about what Patrice has brought up a few times about it being like all Christmas decorations in like downtown around the holiday season and what could be done differently.
And I thought I saw more than one hand. I just missed that little round of hands. I apologize. Stephanie.
I just wanted to offer up, if it's of interest to you, the town newsletter. So if you wanted to include anything that you just mentioned, you can use that as a communication vehicle. So, consider that in anything that you want to promote or communicate. And also I'm getting tired. The field, the Contrati Park Central Field is a site that is COVID safe for, I think we are at now that we're in red, we could consider an event. I would need to confirm that, but I think for a film or something, I think we might be able to do something like that. So we could explore that, just throwing that out there. And then I still need to get you the contact names of the Coast Miwok, and it's been on my list to do that, so I won't forget.
Veronica.
Somebody else having their hand up before me that I missed?
I may have missed it, but
just want to make sure. Okay. 2 questions. One is, if we have things that we feel like could be helpful for the Education Outreach Subcommittee to have on your hands to promote or to do something with, who should I send that email to? Brown Act and efficiency considered.
One of us.
So for Brown Act, sorry, go ahead, Alexandra.
I was just gonna say, we don't have a chair or anything, so just either me, Tayu, Griselda, or Serena, or all of us would be nice. Yeah.
So for Brown Act, you all can communicate it one way. So it's completely fine to send the whole education team an email. That's not the Brown Act problem. The problem is when you start to have a dialogue and conversation. Now they can have a dialogue and conversation because they're not a quorum, so they can do that anytime, any place, whatever. The issue comes when other people join and it becomes a conversation among ResJ members.
Right.
But in terms of like, you know, informing and sending out requests and emails, that's all okay. You just can't do the back and forth.
Okay, hot. That's wonderful. And
Yeah,
my
and
other
then-
question was, did you say that you were thinking about a newsletter by any chance? I know you'd mentioned, Stephanie, the town newsletter as an opportunity for the education outreach to put events, but I just, not that I want to give you work to do, but I've been thinking like, wow, if Fairfax had a monthly post of these are things that are happening in the town, in the schools, in the places, if this is something that you're passionate about, this is where you can show up to do it. So just wanted to throw that into maybe your next subcommittee meeting. Thanks.
I think it'd be really helpful to get a check-in on the budget and how much we're spending, because it seems like the townoffairfax.org is a great centralized resource for us to use and not have to spend money. So I like the idea of a newsletter. I don't like the idea of paying money for it if we don't know where we're at.
Serena.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about like money too, and how to, like Alexandra had a great idea about how to like inspire events without putting on events ourselves. And I don't know if you want to talk more about that, but that was a good idea of like money saving.
Yeah, I think I was just saying how there are many organizations doing this work and they also have budgets. Because I know ours is limited. So we're talking about ways that we can try to not reinvent the wheel and kind of promote other organizations that are already doing the work through whatever it is that we decide, a newsletter or a handbook or posters, things like that, that we can really support other Fairfax and Marin County organizations by spreading the word not for them, but like in addition to what they're doing.
All right, where are we at time, Stephanie?
Or at time.
That's what I thought. Hey, what's up? What's up, timekeeper? I'm not watching today. I usually watch. Okay, are we good to move on to policy?
Yeah, and that'll be really quick. We have not met yet, and that's, yeah.
Okay.
But we will very soon.
All right. So what committees, Lisa, I see your hand, just a second. What committees still have room on them?
Is the maximum 5?
I think it's 6.
Oh, we still have room.
Wait.
They all do.
Is 6, I'm forgetting, is 6 the maximum?
I think it's 5 and
It's
then
5 because 6 tips us over to quorum, right? Yeah, so 5. Thank you, Anne. So is there anybody?
Education has space. We only have 4.
Okay, education, any other committees that only have 4?
I'm going back to my email and who's on
Policing
policy.
only has 4.
Okay, thank you, Patrice.
I think we just have 4 on policy.
Okay, so Sophia, you can think about those. If you know right now, you could let us know, or you can think about them. They all have room.
If I could be on police.
And we don't need a formal action for that, do we?
I just want to make sure that Bruce doesn't count on the police.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always assumed that council members counted like others, but maybe we should check with Garrett and make sure on that. And we also, the council actually defined our ResJ as having 2 youth members. So Sophia, congratulations, you're a youth member. I believe the intention was that the youth members would be non-voting. And we haven't ever come to a point where we have to actually vote on something and it's a split vote and it's really, contentious, but that's, that was the way it was constituted. So I think that the quorum would be taken out of the members, not including the youth members.
So Bruce, would you ask Garrett about that?
I can try to clarify that. And I also will just say right now that when we get to the end of this agenda and we talk about next items, I'll have a little update that I want to give you all about. I talked with Garrett about we have the flexibility to create a process. Maybe we should put it on an agenda to create a process for filling in our members because we don't have our full membership right now. So the council is going to bring that up on the 17th. I'll just give the update now. The council is going to bring that up on the 17th, 2 weeks from yesterday. And to clarify that this committee, the ResJ, has the ability to create our own process for how we're going to choose new members. So we might want to think about it on an agenda of talking about a process for choosing new members.
Thank you.
Stephanie, wait, please. I have a question and Darius' hand was up first. And then Stephanie. Can you follow up on that, Bruce, and answer the question and have Sophia included on the email?
About youth members? Yeah. Okay.
Well, no, about the policing subcommittee first. So she knows beyond
how many would be possible without it being a quorum and how that interfaces with youth members. Yeah.
And Sophia, do you have a second choice? Or do you want to wait to find out the answer?
The other two are policy and education.
Community engagement and education, yeah.
Probably community engagement. I don't know too much about policy.
Okay, so when Bruce emails you, you guys can figure that out and just let us all know. And I actually have a question about youth. Why wouldn't a youth vote count?
Yeah, that was my issue too.
That's just what the council did when they created the committee. We could ask them to change that or whatever. We have a thing like that on the Climate Action Committee right now as well, although we don't have any youth members on the Climate Action Committee, but it's that's if we go back to the council resolution that created this ResJ committee, that was just in there. But I'll try to clarify exactly what that means, and if we want to consider changing it, we can go back to council and say we'd like to ask that it be done in a different way.
So
yeah, that was my comment.
Came from council.
I'm gonna ask us to hold off because there's lots of hands and I don't want to get into missing somebody. So Daria, just a second. I see your hand. Stephanie, I saw yours. Sophia, I saw yours. That's actually a facilitator strategy called stacking. So you guys can know that I got you. I have a comment about that as a facilitator. So as a facilitator, facilitating Committee on Social Justice, youth are so profoundly and incredibly impacted by these issues in all communities. I would be challenged to facilitate a committee where youth cannot vote.
Mm-hmm.
I understand if you're talking about bars in Fairfax, we might make an exception if it's not appropriate for youth to vote. I'm not sure that's going to come up on this committee though. So I just, as a facilitator for that purpose, I would be really challenged to not.
I hear you. I hear you. I'll talk with Garrett about that and we'll see where we can go.
And I want to I want to be
ditto that. Sorry.
I want to be explicit about why. That's a power issue.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to have a committee and part of racial justice is really managing power dynamics and who has it and who doesn't, it's not just because I prefer youth to have a vote. It's actually a strategy to upend oppression around the inclusion of power. All right, Daria, Stephanie, and Sophia.
That's it. I feel the same way.
Okay.
I'm going to be quick because I am sensitive to our norm of ending on time. The first is we actually have 5 people on the policy, so we're sort of at capacity right now. I just checked. The second is I completely agree about youth. And I'm wondering if the policy subcommittee should just take on developing, the process for committee appointments and, inclusion of youth for voting and all that. Just take that on as a first, to do.
So you're saying the policy subcommittee of the ResJ come up with a recommendation to council to change our bylaws essentially.
I'm not suggesting, it would be great, but I'm saying just for our committee.
For our committee, the ResJ, or?
So my understanding from
I'm
what
just
Bruce
trying to
said,
understand, that's all.
my understanding is that decision was a town council decision when you formed ResJ. Is that
Right.
correct?
Which doesn't mean it can't be changed, but I'm just trying to understand what and I'm hearing loud and clear that we're wondering why youth are singled out for not voting, and I will,
Yeah.
but in
I'll
order to
take that.
change that needs
Yeah.
to be going back to the council and saying we'll do an amendment. Now, the Climate Action Committee, which I've helped to found and has been around for 7 years or something, has twice updated our bylaws. So bylaws can be updated.
Okay.
This is not hard and fast.
So who can
It's just
take
what
that?
started out, and we can go back and change it.
Who can take that to town council then? If it's the source is town council created that.
I can talk with Garrett to start with and
Okay.
say this has come up as a question, do we really need this? How about we consider changing it, et cetera? Yeah, we'll see where we go. It might be easy.
Thank you. Is it a separate stream of work though to get the appointments going to replace the 2 vacancies we have though?
That was the update that I just tried to give really quickly. I talked with Garrett today, and he told me that it will be, he wants to, and I concur with this, put it on our council agenda for the 17th of this month, which is 2 weeks from now, and I can't presume to speak for the council, but it will probably pass, but put it on the council agenda to allow the ResJ to explicitly say that the ResJ can develop its own, I'm looking at my notes here and I can't read them. How about that? I always was told I had horrible handwriting, and they were right. The council, the proposal would be for the council to allow ResJ, give the ResJ the explicit ability to develop its own selection and appointment process for selecting new members. So in other words, we all were appointed by the council to start with, but that the question now comes up with when we lose a member, how do we replace that member? And Garrett is proposing to put it on the council agenda to say the ResJ can come up with our process. So
that's what I was suggesting. So that I was suggesting that the policy subcommittee develop that selection and appointment.
Yeah, I'd say the policy subcommittee is welcome to talk about it right now. And meanwhile, 2 weeks from yesterday, the council would have on its consent calendar to explicitly say, yep, that's what you guys can do.
If the group thinks it's a good idea, it's just a suggestion. Because I think we do want to fill this vacancy, and it's something we can work,
Yeah. So doing those 2 in parallel seems like a good thing, so that we can, as quickly as we can, get to where we can actually do the process and fill the vacancies. Yeah.
You'll follow up on that? You'll follow
Who
up
will
on that?
follow up?
So Anne
Um,
is taking notes on our next steps, and I'm just trying to really be clear about who's doing what, so we can, some of the
Well,
some
there's,
of the questions.
as far as that, there's nothing to follow up on. Garrett told me he's already planning to put it on the agenda, and as mayor, I work with him on the agenda. We'll put it on the agenda. So it'll be on the town council agenda. I can't speak for the council, but my guess is it'll probably pass. So if you want to start thinking about a process, I would say, sure, go ahead, start thinking about a process, because yeah, we should start doing that. But I don't think there's anything else to follow up on. We'll put it on the agenda for the council.
Okay, thank
But
you.
I will follow up on the other question about the youth and the quorum. That's a follow-up that I will do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sophia, then Liesel, and Tayu. Sorry for the wait.
Well, I'm not sure if this really applies, but I was curious, like I understand that like Serena and I are younger than like most of the members, but like as both like legal adults, I was curious why we're still like considered youth members that can't vote.
I'm not considered a youth member.
Oh, so it's just me?
No, I think it was you, and then there was Sophie Mattershead, who wasn't able to continue with the committee. So she actually, we lost her as a member right away. There were you two were the youth members.
Oh,
I
well,
think
if
the age cutoff was 17.
oh,
But
well,
where
if
that
it,
came from, I don't know.
yeah, well, if it's that, I'm 18 now. So if that's the problem, then that's not an issue.
Well, there we go.
We should have known that 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, I know. I was confused. I was like,
Maybe we already have a new member who's not a youth member. But
okay.
I will ask about it anyway, but yes, thank you for telling us that, and congratulations.
oh, thank you.
And happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And happy birthday.
All right, Liesel, and then Tayu.
Okay. Yeah, I really hope that we will follow up on the whole youth issue, because that does seem like actually a really important social justice issue eventually for every town committee. But my main questions are very simple. I can't remember who's on the policy committee, and I'm also curious about how those meetings, what's the process for getting those meetings going, and who sets the agenda?
So you're on it, and who else is on policy, just for the good of the order here? Laylee,
Amal, Laylee, Liesel, myself, and Veronica.
Okay, thank you.
And it's a good question.
I'm going to stop you. Sorry. I really want to keep with calling on folks that have their hand raised before you make a comment on that. So I'm happy to call on you again after Tayu has a chance to go. So Liesel, Laylee, Amal, Stephanie. I got everybody. Yes. Can I get a thumbs up?
Veronica.
Veronica, you're on policy too?
Yes.
Five people.
Okay, and Veronica. Okay. You guys can work, you all can work together to set up your meeting time. And if you choose to have a chair of your committee, you can do that as well. All right, so I have Tayu is next, and then Stephanie, Veronica, Alexandra.
I just have a really quick question. How many positions are we trying to fill? And who other than Sophia Matters had left?
So
Ziana.
Right.
Yeah.
And she was not a youth member, right?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Stephanie.
I don't have anything.
Veronica.
Just want to say, as someone who's on 2 subcommittees, if there's not enough space, and Sophia, you want to be on either of those 2, I would so happily step back off of one of them, whichever you'd prefer to. Don't you shake your head at me. I know you want me to. Happy to step back to make space for you, Sophia. I'm so glad you're here again, and really I'm excited for you to jump in.
Alexandra, and then Bruce, I see you.
I just wanted to comment on the policy committee or subcommittee taking charge of the process and appointment of ResJ members. Seems like that is a majority white subcommittee. So I want to name that and acknowledge that maybe that's not the best option. I firmly believe that the people of color should be able to form the questions and or the process and be a part of that.
Well, can we work it?
So I'm going to go with Bruce, and then other thoughts about that.
I have my hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Alexandra. And what I was going to say might be germane to that. It's a little odd. Just, I hate to be bringing in details, but I guess that's my job. The council created the ResJ and also explicitly said that we would have a PPPSA as a subcommittee, and that both the ResJ and the PPPSA subcommittee would be public committees. So we have public input, we're on Zoom, it's a public Zoom meeting. But the other subcommittees that we have formed, and I'll say the same thing about our Climate Action Committee, we use subcommittees a lot on the Climate Action Committee. The subcommittees are less than a quorum of the full committee. They don't have public meetings, but on the other hand, the subcommittee, and they don't have to have the Brown Act restriction in that the subcommittee members can email each other and so forth. So subcommittees are great because you can get a lot done, you know, because you don't have those restrictions. But on the other hand, the subcommittee makes no actual decisions. The subcommittee only advises the committee as a whole, comes back and says, okay, we've come up with this idea. So for example, if you want to write a document, it could be incredibly painful for us to write a document as a group in this forum right now. It could take us so long that we would all be pulling our hair out by the time we got finished. But a subcommittee, a smaller group, could draft a document and then come back to the committee and say, well, we came out with a document. That's what the committee that worked on the mission and vision did, was the small group can get together and do it, but then that small group doesn't adopt it. They only come back to the committee and say, we've got a draft here for you all to look at. So just that clarification, other than the PPPSA, the subcommittees don't have to work according to the Brown Act. They can get together and knock out a document, email it back and forth, use Google Docs, whatever to do it, but then they bring it back to the committee to really approve it, edit it, adopt it. If that's any help.
Do you have something? So I have Stephanie and Tayu are up next. Do you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see happen?
I suppose a subcommittee that's specifically designated for that purpose, just because I hear what Bruce is saying, and I acknowledge that as the policies subcommittee is not making any choice for us. If they did write let's say an application for the ResJ, but if majority of white people are working on it, we're kind of walking into a situation where someone could be triggered because people of color didn't have their eyes on it and didn't write it. Like the application that we all filled out, I felt offended by, and I don't know who wrote it, to be fair, but I felt offended by some of the questions. And so I just feel like it's worth mentioning, you know, obviously I don't speak for everyone here, but it's worth mentioning that it would be beneficial, I think, to us to have people of color write it.
So I'm wondering, we're at 9:30. We have a couple more agenda items.
Lisa, I'd really like to speak. I'd really like to speak because I have something to say about this. May I speak on this?
Yeah, you may as soon as I finish.
Okay.
we have agreed as a ResJ to be called on in the best effort I can make to take your hands in order. Tayu has also had her hand up, and I'm going to ask you to please wait until I can get to you. I'm trying to take people in the order that I've seen them. So do you feel like this is something you guys want to continue talking about to come to resolution, or that can go on another agenda item? We're at 9:30 and I have 2 more comments. Not me personally, our ResJ members have 2 more comments, and I just want to take note of the time.
And we
Alexandra.
have public comment.
And public, yes, we still have public comment. We have a budget discussion, the renaming of Sir Francis Drake, and public comment and our closing. So Alexandra, do you have a suggestion to offer the group around that?
Like for tonight's meeting?
Yeah, right now, I mean, I hear there's a lot of comments, and I'll take the next 2 comments, of course, but I'm wondering if this is something you guys can resolve tonight, or if you feel like there needs to be more discussion, and that can either happen tonight at your decision, it's not mine, or we can put it on another agenda item, as another agenda item.
I
Trying
think
to throw it out to the group.
for the sake of time and acknowledging the importance of the rest of the agenda, I'd love to hear what Stephanie and Tayu have to say, but I think this is could be an agenda item for the next meeting.
I second what Alexandra's just said. This is too important to give it a short shrift.
Okay. And then Patrice, you have a raise hand button, and so I can also see that just to make sure it's fair to everybody. Okay, Stephanie, and then Tayu.
So I just want to say that I totally acknowledge and hear and support what Alexandra's saying. So if this is the case, but, and I don't know that Laylee is a white person. I just want to say that. I don't know that she, identifies as white, but that's for her to say. I also, if this is your feeling and position, then this is going to be the case for all of the work of the subcommittee. So we should talk about repopulating the whole committee. And just to reiterate and summarize what Bruce said, I would never, and the subcommittee would never just run with anything. We would develop something like this, like the mission and vision, right? You develop a draft, you bring it to the committee. Okay, let's work through it. Let's finalize it. Like that's how it operates, right? So I think, I agree with Patrice. I agree with you. Let's table it for another, but I think we're going to have to, there's white people on this committee and I can't stand the current, and I regret the questionnaire that y'all had to go through. The interview questions are horrific and classist and terrible. So I know, and I know about that. But at some point we're going to have to get to a working level of trust, right? And like I said, we would bring it back to the group and work through it for feedback, editing, finalization. So let's just, punt it to next month. And, but we might need to think through the composition of the whole subcommittee if that's how you feel.
Sorry, Tayu.
I was just going to echo what Alexandra actually said. What I was going to say is I think it should be an ad hoc committee and mostly people of color, and definitely move it to the next agenda, next meeting agenda, because it's too important.
Okay, so the other policy work is not important then? Does anyone?
Stephanie, I'm sorry.
We're not talking about policy. This is just about the application, which was incredibly offensive. And that's, it's not, we're not fighting anyone.
No, but I'm saying the work there's the point being that it's white people on the subcommittee and we have this body of work in front of us. And so the point that we have this.
I'm going to stop you and I'm going to take Serena, who's had her hand up. And if you feel like there needs, there's already been a decision that they want to table the agenda item. And Serena's had her hand up for a while. Serena.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, just from observing what just happened, I don't feel like Alexandra was treated very fairly, in my opinion. I don't know if I could cite any specific norm for that, but I just feel like maybe I don't think it was a conscious thing, but I think some things were explained to her that she already knew. Just from like maybe my experience being on a committee with her, she seemed to know the Brown Act stuff pretty well. But I think the point that she was trying to make, and I think maybe it was misunderstood, was that just because any person of color or even person is a part of the larger RESJ committee doesn't mean that their feedback would be taken in a committee, and like being an active member of the committee is more of a chance to actually like have an effect on the outcome of something. And that's what I understood as what she was trying to get across, but I could be wrong. I don't want to speak for her.
Thank you, Serena. So I do feel the need to comment. There was some eye rolling at the fact that I needed to pause and take people in order. That was a team decision. And so I'm gonna ask that we remember the norms right now. And that we remember that it was a team decision to raise hands, to have a speaking order. And we discussed it at length, whether it would be open comment or you would be raising your hands. And so at any moment, you're more than welcome to ask for open dialogue. But I just want to be clear that I am absolutely going to honor the requests of the team to the extent possible. And that's why I made that decision. I do want to offer Alexandra an opportunity, though, to comment, because there's a couple comments made in reference to what she said. So Alexandra, you're more than welcome to comment or pass, whatever you'd like to do, but I wanted to just offer you an opportunity to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Serena. I really appreciate that. I'm feeling a bit like that, but I also recognize that it's a discussion and I'm not gonna take anything personally, but I do want to say that I did make a conscious effort to say majority white subcommittee. I didn't assume anyone's identity. So that's the only comment. And I really appreciate Serena's comment as well.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other last comments to close this out? Yes, Stephanie.
I apologize. I didn't hear that. I heard all white, so I apologize. And I didn't mean to be patronizing. I was thinking you didn't understand that that's what, like, I thought you were thinking we would operate in a vacuum and just roll with whatever we developed. And I didn't want you thinking that. So would never want to be condescending or patronizing. And so if you already knew that, I apologize.
All right, are there any last comments before we move on? So I do want to make note that there are different places where decisions happen, and those places hold power. And so I think it's important to note, definitely review who is on what committee and where and what committees hold power to be making decisions for the future of your team. So that's worth considering, definitely. So I want to do a time check. It's 9:40. I am going to ask that each person weigh in on this. We allocated 20 minutes to the budget discussion. My hunch is it will go much longer. We have 5 minutes to share information about the renaming of Sir Francis Drake. I think that's less than 5. We still need to take public comment, and there are approximately 4 people still here with us. And then we have to close our meeting. I'll do that as short as possible, but we have next steps, items for next meeting, process observation, appreciations. So how would you all like to move forward? Stephanie.
can I make a motion to move the Sir Francis Drake Boulevard discussion? Or just remove it? I don't know that we need to talk about it unless anyone wants to talk about it. I know we need to get to the budget.
I see your hand, Patrice, just a second. Okay, so a motion to remove item E from the agenda. Bruce.
I
If
second.
I can, yeah, if I can add to that motion, so we do, because we don't have to go through a vote for each change, but to add to that as
It's
a
actually my
friendly amendment.
mistake. I'm sorry, I made a facilitator mistake, and Patrice had her hand up and I even noticed that, and then I called on you. So
Okay,
I'm so
yeah.
sorry, that's completely on me. I, just for the record, it's really hard for me to navigate personal hands and virtual hands. And I often miss the virtual hands because I'm watching for real person hands. So Patrice, I apologize for that. Please go ahead.
No apology necessary. I was just gonna say that I agree with Stephanie. The town council made a final decision on the renaming of Sir Francis Drake last night in town council. So I don't even understand why we would spend a second on it. It's been.
Is that a second? Are you officially seconding her motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to clarify. I don't want to make any assumptions. All right. Bruce, I interrupted you. Would you like to go
Okay,
next?
I just wanted to,
Yes.
well, I concur that we don't need to do an update on the renaming of Sir Francis Drake. As Patrice said, the council decided that last night. You can listen to the meeting if you want to. It was quite late. I would suggest that as far as tonight's agenda, that we do just a very quick update on the money that we have in the budget and the process that we have, which is very quick. I can say it now, but I won't. But and then that we continue the question of what we actually do with the budget, because we're just running out of time tonight.
So we have a second to that motion. I'd like to do roll call. And then we can go for any other items unless you're going to make a new motion.
Well, we can combine them. We can combine, like we usually do on the council. If we're discussing changes to the agenda, we discuss it until we're all ready to vote on all the changes to the agenda. We don't have to go through the roll call for each change. I mean, you can if you want to, but just in the interest of time, you can roll the discussion into one and do a roll call vote on that.
Okay,
It's up to you.
I'm happy to do whatever's fastest. I was doing it because we had a second motion and I understood we need to take a roll call because there's been a second.
Yeah, we would call that a friendly amendment to the motion, since the motion was already amended.
Okay.
I mean, this is all, but I'm just saying, in the interest of time, we don't have to do two roll call votes. We can figure out what we want to do with that vote, then do it.
Okay, can you clarify your friendly amendment so that we can
That in addition to taking off the Sir Francis Drake discussion, that we also take off the questions about what we might spend money on, the GARE membership and the other one, but that we leave on it just a quick update about what money we have, and so that we know what we can think about in terms of budget, because that's quick and something people have expressed interest in knowing. That's the amendment.
Okay.
I second if it needs to be seconded again.
Do we need to do a roll call now?
And now, okay, so Alexandra,
Yes.
Daria,
Aye.
Griselda,
Yes.
Laylee,
Yes.
Lisa, Patrice, is that a yes, Lisa? Yeah, Lisa?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
We can
Patrice,
hear you.
Patrice? Serena,
Yes.
Sophia,
Yes.
Tayu,
Yes.
Veronica, Bruce,
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Okay, so we will just give the budget update. That's Bruce. And then we will move on. We'll remove item E and we'll move on to public comment.
This is so quick. So we originally had $100,000, which is, I still find amazing, allocated to this committee. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there. Nobody else is spending it. It's still there. The only expenditure has been for Lisa's excellent, wonderful, amazing, and much appreciated facilitation. So I don't know an exact figure, but of course it changes with time. But we've got at least 50,000 in the budget currently. And as far as a process for spending that money, it's up to our committee to decide what we wanted to do with it. So things that were thought about in the original council discussion about forming the ResJ were maybe we'd want to do something like collecting some data or having some speakers or whatever. We can do any of those kinds of things. So there's nothing mysterious happening and the money hasn't gone anywhere and it's still there. That's it.
All right. So Veronica and then Stephanie, and I'm actually going to ask that we just use personal hands. Towards the end of the night, I'm juggling a lot and it gets harder for me to keep every tiny detail in place and I don't want to miss anybody. So if you could just do your real hands, I'm missing people with the virtual hand, except Patrice, of course. Okay, who is next? Veronica.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you, Bruce. And I feel just wanting to clarify, is they're going, and I'm feeling a little awkward that I'm asking this question because I know that it's public. So is that 50,000 what's going to stay if ResJ chose to do nothing with it? Is that already, Lisa's gotten paid already? And, or is that some of that will be going also to Lisa? Just wondering what the reserve is that we have available as a ResJ fully.
Well, if the council, I believe, Lisa, you can correct me on this, our staff, Garrett, arranged with Lisa that you had a $40,000 original, like we would budget that for Lisa's original facilitation. So it's kind of a decision to be made at some point. Lisa has said early on, I'm speaking way out of my realm here, but I'll say that Lisa has said consistently to us that she would like to see us, the members of the ResJ, eventually take more power and be able to facilitate ourselves more. I don't know when that would happen, how that would happen, or whether we would want that to happen, but I would say that's a decision that would be the decision of the committee to make as far as, if we want to continue with Lisa helping us along, which I'll just say right off, I think that would be a great idea. I don't think we're ready to be to just take off without Lisa right now. So there's going to be more money spent on Lisa's facilitation than has been spent so far. That's how much it was already allocated for that. But the bottom line is this is the committee's budget. The committee can decide how to allocate that budget. Does that answer the question, or did I miss the question?
I would add to that there's also a great deal of pro bono time that is in addition to any contract hours.
Yeah.
That should clearly be said. Thank you for
they're
reminding us, Lisa.
It's not about me. I'm just saying in terms of like the quantity of time spent, you all should know. Just the quantity of time isn't the amount isn't representative of the quantity of time. And I don't say that because I want anybody to say anything about the pro bono. I say that just because it's factual in terms of time, money, and your budget.
Yeah, I just had two more things that I wanted to say or ask. And the first is on the volunteer board, the Fairfax Volunteer Board, we have an appointed treasurer, and wondered if that could be helpful for, it would be helpful for me, I know, and every meeting we get an update on what the account budget is within the volunteer board budget, and we know where all the money is going. Not that it's going anywhere that we don't know yet, but just to catch that ahead of time and be planning for that. And so wanted to put that on the agenda as an action item for the next meeting, that we could consider appointing a treasurer if folks feel like that would be helpful. And then to recognize that I feel very passionate that the Res J should continue to get funded on a yearly basis, and want to make sure as we lead into June, next meeting is April, May to June, there's 3 months before the budget discussions happen with town council, and just want to put that on our radar, that it feels really important for me that we continue to secure a lot of money to support this work. And just wanted to have that fully on our radar.
Stephanie and Liesel, was that a hand? Okay.
Hi there. Oh, is Liesel going first?
No, you are.
Oh, okay. I have a lot of thoughts on this. So like Bruce said, $100,000, in case there's anyone on the call that doesn't know, just from a comparative basis, as a fraction of the general fund for the town of Fairfax, and compared to the other committees or commissions in Fairfax, $100,000 is a huge sum of money. And I'm delighted that we have it. And I don't think there should be any awkwardness in what we're funding Lisa. She's phenomenal, and I love that we have her, and the 40,000 is public information, and I'm all about transparency. So I don't think we should feel weird about talking about it openly. All that being said, it kind of I have a pretty formal background, and I think some of other people do too. This all happened a little backwards. Typically, in my experience, you develop program proposals of what you need, and you say, well, we want to do this, and this costs 10,000. We want to do B, and this costs 5,000. You develop a budget, and you say, we need $70,000, and here's why. And then you kind of negotiate back and forth with your fellow council members or your fellow business partners or whatever environment you're in, right? And you usually ask for twice what you need, and you get half of what you ask for, is usually how it nets out, depending on the organization. That's not how it worked out here. Nobody, including Bruce and myself, asked for any money. They handed us $100,000, and we were like, wow. So it's a huge windfall, but I am very uncomfortable with us saying, how about let's spend money on this? That sounds good. Let's spend money on this. That sounds good. I'd rather us have a session where we strategically plan our program dollars. And all that being said, the GAR $1,000 membership, I feel very strongly about, and I would ask that all of you go to that website. It is a tremendous resource for us.
So I gotta stop you, because you all agreed not to talk about the other items.
I didn't know that. Okay, I'll stop talking about that.
Yeah.
So Veronica, I think it's a little premature for us to get a treasurer at some point in time. Absolutely. But I am not personally in favor of like piecemealing expenses until we as a group say, yeah, let's give, $10,000 to the community engagement group. Let's, or however we want to structure it. But I'm a little uncomfortable with this sort of willy-nilly spend as we go. That's my personal opinion. So I would be in favor of having maybe a special meeting, or dedicate a half a meeting just to budget planning. And Veronica, you're absolutely right. We need to think through what we're going to ask for. And I can tell you right now, there's going to be a ton of scrutiny, a ton, on the 100K, how we've spent it, how we intend to spend it, yada, yada, yada. So we should all be thinking about that. I mean, not to like freak you out, but we do need to start thinking about that. Thank you. And I'm not turning my video on because I'm having health issues and I'm supposed to be asleep right now. So I'm done.
Patrice and Bruce.
I kind of double second Stephanie. I'm sick as a dog. My camera's not on. This is not how budgeting works. If I were approving a budget from a management perspective, I would say, what have you guys accomplished this year? What have we accomplished? Like literally, I know that someone said last week they were upset that I said we were a do nothing committee, but I challenge anyone to tell me 5 things we've done that aren't in the kumbaya realm. And so that's what I think Stephanie is speaking to. That's how our budget for next year is going to be determined. Guys, we have to get something done. And I'm sorry if I drop off, but I literally, I just do not feel well.
Thank you. And Bruce, I'm gonna have Liesel go before you because I didn't write her name down and I forgot. I'm sorry, Liesel.
Definitely, fine.
As the night goes on, I myself get a little bit tired.
So thank you. This has been very enlightening. And I do think that being very transparent about the budget and having a good process is important just because of the amount of scrutiny that I think this committee is under, both for good and not so good reasons. So I'd like to hear more about that in another meeting in a structured way. I think one of the questions that I had was, how much of Lisa's time do we have left? I actually am not sure how that is set up, if it's a, of a piece or if it's like by time or how that's set up. So then I started to feel a little anxious, like, oh my God, how much of your time do we have left?
Bruce?
Well, okay, so I would triple second what Stephanie said, and just I look at Stephanie used the word windfall. I think that's perfect. That $100,000, which is truly astronomical for any subcommittee. It's more than every subcommittee in Fairfax for all of time has ever had total. It's monumental. So it's great. It's good that we have it, but it's not necessarily something that's going to be repeatable. It's not necessarily something where we can say next year, let's have 100,000 more when we, so I totally agree. The process would be that we figure out what we're doing. And when we run low on money, we go back and say, this is more stuff we want to do and we want to ask for that money, but that's the way it would be done. And as far as the question for Lisa that was just asked, I would really, it's getting really late and we're not prepared for this. So I think we should table any further, like get down to the details and look at the numbers to another meeting. And it is getting late.
Okay,
That's it.
Pardon, Bruce? Did you ask me a question? Sorry, Bruce.
No, I just said that's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
That's all I had to say. That's all.
Alexandra.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Stephanie had said. And also Veronica. I think having a treasurer would be awesome and helpful. But I really I'm starting to get frustrated now because that was the second time we've been called do nothings, and it doesn't sit well with me. We've done a lot. There's a lot of room to grow. But the fact that we have all of these subcommittees, the fact that we met with Interim Chief Tabaranza, the fact that we're here every month is something. And it is only going to help us next year to be more productive. It's all a learning curve. There's going to be obstacles in our way. Sorting through things like what we did tonight is progress. It's something. It's not worth nothing. Everything that we've done is worth something. I mean, I don't know how many, but I know that there are some of you who come prepared with notes and come prepared with stats to offer the group. And that's something. That's not not anything at all. So I'm starting to get frustrated with that, but totally agree with what Stephanie said about the budget. I don't want to deter away too much, but I just felt like I needed to say that.
Thank you, Alexandra. Are we good to move on to public comment? And Patricia, your hand was up, but it wasn't removed, so I'm not sure if you're removing it, putting it back. Can you let me know before we move on?
Yeah, I'm putting it back. And perhaps this is, guys, because I come from the world of corporate America, where we are challenged with not only writing plans, but executing against them. And again, I challenge any of you. What 5 things have we accomplished? Not the kumbaya stuff, but the other stuff, because this is going to go into my decision. I don't want to be a group of do-nothings. And I'm sorry if that offends you, but write 5 things on a piece of paper that this group has accomplished.
Alexandra.
Yeah, look, I feel like I just named a bunch of things that we've accomplished, and to say I'm sorry, but you're still do-nothings is counterproductive. So I don't want to get into things, but I'm feeling very frustrated.
Yeah, guys, I'm out. I'm gonna sign off right now, and
I guess that's all I have to say.
You're welcome to have more time, Alexandra. We can take a pause, and you're more than welcome to have more time.
I think the only thing I was going to add is that I think we all have tons of experience in a variety of different fields. And I want to acknowledge that. And we all bring unique skills. So I see a value to what we're doing. Building a team takes time.
Thank you. I think this is a moment to remember our norms. I'm going to call our norms. I think it is a moment to remember to speak from our own personal experience and that alone, and not make assumptions. And I appreciate that everybody's really starting to speak their truth, even though it may be uncomfortable. That's really going to strengthen the team. So take a pause, if you will, right now, before I move us on to public comment. And if you can just check the norms that you marked. And just take a deep breath. Just take a moment of your strengths and your growth areas. And what did you lift up tonight, and what do you still need to work on? Okay, thank you. Are we good to close the budget item out? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move us to public comment. And this is public comment for items that have been on the agenda. So Anne, if you could check out our participants, and I'm going to officially open public comment. We have one hand up.
Joe.
And Anne, how long will Joe have?
You'll have 3 minutes, Joe, okay?
Okay, thank you, Anne. Good evening, everyone. Thank you once again for all your work and time and effort that you're putting in. And I wanted to speak a bit about going back to Alexandra's PPP essay report and Vice Mayor Hellman's comments around data and integrity. I feel the need to respond because I think they're directed at me. I'm part of an activist group called Rethink Police, who centers the leadership of the movement for Black Lives and Black Lives Matter in advocating for their policy of defunding the police. And we're looking at the Fairfax Police Department and the Marin County Sheriffs. And part part of that work is taking the data that's shared by the police department, and when we see concerning things, we amplify it and share it with the public. And I'm just going to read from the Fairfax Police Department's statistics page. It says the Fairfax Police Department keeps a record of all activities, I repeat, all activities performed by officers during each month and posts the total monthly information here. I'll repeat again, the total monthly information here. So what I think Vice Mayor Hellman had issue with was some statistics around police initiated incidents. And all we simply did for that number was division. We took from that page that says total monthly information, we divided police initiated incidents by total incidents. And we came up with the percentage and shared that. And there was no spinning, no massaging. So if there's a problem, the issue seems to be the integrity of the data that the police department is sharing. If it's not complete, if there's software issues, that isn't an activist group's, that isn't the public's issue. That's a Fairfax Police Department issue. So I think that they need to share. I shouldn't have to have a meeting with Chief Tabaranza about his data before I share it to understand what they meant or intended or about software shortcomings. We just need clear data. It's pretty simple. So I just wanted to share that because it's concerning when I hear people of power continue to call out activists for lacking integrity, for being unreasonable. It's just not fair. It's using power, we're working for a cause. And I also want to point out about the application, that the problematic nature of the application was shared with Councilmember Hellman back on July 23rd, and we still sit with that same application. So I'm with you, Alexandra. Let's get to work and get that application cleaned up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other hands in the public? I'm not seeing any.
No more hands? Okay, I'm going to close public comment for items on the agenda. And I'm going to open public comment for items not on the agenda.
Okay, I can't, Joe's hand's up, but I'm not sure if he needs to talk again. And I'm not sure.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if I was on. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to present an opportunity for this committee that there's a lot of talk. I've heard it come up a few times that the town of Fairfax has a resolution that Black Lives Matter. And I've gone back and looked, and it was on the agenda on July 1st as agenda item 5 of the consent calendar, but Councilmember Kohler actually pulled it from the consent calendar, hoping to pair it up with agenda item 15, which was the formation of the Res-J committee, but council never got to that item that night, and it was Mayor Goddard continued that item to July 15th, and then the resolution of that Black Lives Matter was never attached in the future, and so there were a lot of municipalities that were passing similar resolutions back there, and I think we've gone through a lot of growth, and we've got this wonderful committee, and how wonderful it would be for this committee to work on a true resolution that Black Lives Matter for the town of Fairfax, and we could get something that is really an incredible piece and a guiding light. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Anne, is that it?
Yep, I don't see any more hands.
Okay, I'm going to close public comment for items not on the agenda. Thank you, everyone in the public, for being here this late with us and offering your thoughts and comments on our work. I'm going to move us on to the next item, which is closing out the meeting for the evening. We're almost there, everybody. Thank you for hanging in there. So I'd like to do a review of next steps. And if you could name the next steps that you have.
From the whole meeting, or?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I have.
How many, why don't I ask this first? How many do you have?
I think I just have.
I'm hearing a lot of pages. I'm like wondering.
You wrote a lot down. I process slowly, but the main next step was Bruce was going to follow up with Garrett on figuring out this no more than 5 subcommittee and the youth member thing. And the next step was figuring out how the ResJ will choose its own process for membership. And moving this piece of, redoing the application with the policy committee part. So those were the ones that stood out to me.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other next steps Anne missed? And then Anne, can you take these next steps and send them out to the group, please? Veronica?
The budget piece being added to the agenda at the next meeting and the possibility of, is that separate?
Yeah, we'll do items
Okay.
for the next meeting separately.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. No problem.
Does anyone, did I capture that correctly, Lisa? I mean, and everyone else, next steps?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
I'll always check with everybody. I'm not writing them down just because of the other things I have going on. I wouldn't possibly be able to, I would mess it up every time, I'm sure. Thank you so much, Anne, for writing them down. And now items for the next meeting. I have 2. I think that I missed a few, no disrespect if they were yours. So the one that Anne mentioned about discussing interview process and the application committee, and the item to discuss budget issues, we tabled D, so we'll include the content from D and an item to discuss treasurer. And this would be the time, if you want to have other items on the agenda, then we would consider with the chairs when we create our agenda. Serena.
I think the community engagement and education subcommittee wanted to address how to respond to emails or letters that we receive.
That's right. Thank you. I forgot. I think that was more than you as well. Several people had that question. Veronica.
And also, I feel like maybe Alexandra mentioned the concept of being able to have a little bit of time to be able to make comments after public comment, if that feels available. Thank you for our members of public continuing to show up, just to say that.
Yeah, that would be a committee decision if you want to have more discussion, like more dialogue after that. So I'll add that one. Any other items?
Hi, do you see my hand?
No, I missed it. Oh, thank you.
Are we talking about the next agenda, or are you so is budget on there? Or are we saying budget is a separate discussion?
We're saying that budget is an item for our next Res Day agenda. We have several items that would go under a budget discussion. The items from tonight, which are parameters of funding, we had action item, and we had 2 action items, and then the other item that will go under that is whether or not you appoint a treasurer.
Okay, I don't know what else you have on that agenda, but you're going to need at least 90 minutes for a budget discussion.
We could talk about that when we meet to plan the budget.
I know, I just wanted everyone to hear my thoughts on that. And then for follow-up, mission and vision, we got to set up a 90-minute special meeting, we said.
Oh, that's right.
Okay. I do have that written
Okay,
down.
thanks.
Thank you. Other items for the agenda?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, Anne, can you remove Joe, please?
Yeah, sorry. Oh,
Okay. If thoughts come up in between now and when we plan, we generally plan, it really depends on our schedules, but 2 weeks, and then we revise right before it's due, just for everybody to know our process. And I think that brings us to process observation report out. Da, da, da. Are we all still here? Sophia, that's you. How do you think we did on holding our norms tonight? You had a very challenging night to take on the very first process observation.
I
What are
think
some highlights and growth areas?
I think that one of the ones of speaking your truth, I think we did a pretty good job of that and speaking from our own personal experiences and not making assumptions about other people overall. I think definitely an area of growth potentially would be the calling out versus calling in, and making sure that when we have disagreements with someone, it doesn't get personal, and that we instead, again, just focus on our own personal and how we feel about the situation. But yeah, I think overall it went pretty well.
Thank you. And if I could ask everybody to take a just 30-second quick check on your own process. How did you engage with the norms? Where were challenge areas? We're not going to share out. I just want to take a pause given the content of today. All right. Thank you so much, Sophia. Thank you, everyone. You really leaned in to do the work, and I really do believe that you took one step further towards fulfilling your purpose of ResJ. I know this was a challenge for each and every one of you in different ways, and I have the greatest respect for the work you're doing. A quick note before appreciations, there's a couple, so I think that there's a misunderstanding about the 2 minutes, and I really want to clarify that you don't always have to speak only for 2 minutes. We only do that specifically as a strategy with a whip around, so every single voice is heard when it's necessary to make sure that that's inclusive. It doesn't mean forevermore into the future, the only time you'll ever have is 2 minutes. So there's just been a couple comments. I think there might have been a misunderstanding, and some people asked in the one-on-ones I had. So just know that I'll try to be more clear about process if that's needed. So last, we are at appreciations. I know it's late, but I do want to encourage you all to lean into appreciations tonight before we close.
I just want to acknowledge how really hard this is and how much I appreciate each and every one of you for showing up and making your best effort to move this committee forward.
Mm-hmm.
Alexandra.
I want to second what Darius said. I really appreciate all of you, and I trust all of you very much to do the work, and I feel really grateful to be working with all of you and getting a chance to get to know you all. And I apologize for being reactionary. That was not great.
Thank you, Alexandra. Other appreciations? Veronica.
I appreciate Sophia for jumping back in with us, and Alexandra for you. I see you stepping up a lot, and it's really inspiring, and I feel like we really need you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie's there with her virtual hand.
Tayu. Oh, thank you, Daria. See, I'm really bad at the virtual hands. Tayu and then Stephanie.
Stephanie's hand was up before me.
Okay, thank you very much. Stephanie, sorry.
I am really exhausted and I have real health issues, so I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude by not having my camera on. I'm just hanging on by a thread. I was so apprehensive about coming tonight and you know how it was all going to unfold. And Lisa, I think you've done an extraordinary job, and I just thank everybody for their contributions and their authenticity and honesty. And I genuinely believe progress is happening. And I'm checking myself, and I just know that there's a lot of self-awareness happening, and I just thank you for giving me along the way. And I am very anxious to get work done, and at the same time, I think we have made a lot of progress. So I'm holding both of those, I guess, equally. I think that's it. Just thank you all so very much.
Thank you. Tayu.
I just want to say how grateful I am for the voices of the young people on this committee, Alexandra, Sophia, and Serena. I think they are our future, and they have the most skin in the game, literally. And so I am grateful that these 3 women are on this committee with us and speaking their truths.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not supposed to say yes to him. I'm sorry. That just popped out. I'm sorry. All right. Any other appreciations? All right. Oh, Lisa, yes.
I just gonna say I appreciate how you've tried to again make sure that everyone's voices are heard and that the rest of us are picking up on trying to also be very active in making that happen. I saw people do that a bunch of times tonight, so super cool. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate the work you did tonight. I want you to know I do not take your work to step into this lightly. And I hope that you feel it was handled with care and some love and true dedication to the cause. So with that, I will say good night. Thank you so much.